Hi, everybody. Sound check. How are we doing? We okay? All right. May I ask those of you on Zoom, if you're not speaking, to mute, get rid of any background noise. So welcome. Nice to see a good turnout on a kind of a toasty Wednesday afternoon. I was told just today there wasn't a day in July that wasn't at least 90 degrees. And one night the low was 85. So thanks for coming out and continuing a tradition of DSCA of meeting every month of the year. So I'm David Lough and I'm president. Welcome if there's some new folks on the call today. I say there are 12 on Zoom. So with that said, I'm going to declare quorum. I see we have all of our board members. Kathy Sellers is on the road somewhere. We have 9, if I'm counting correct. So we have a quorum. Moving to the secretary's report, we circulated the minutes the other day. And were there any comments or corrections, edits to those minutes?
Move approval.
Okay, we have a move of approval from Peter. Is there a second? Second. A second from Ken Sheelan. And all those in favor?
Whose middle name is Roger?
Okay. All right, approved unanimously. Part moving on to
Alt V. Where's Alt?
Right there.
$72.41.
Okay, we'll come back to talk a little bit more about money later in the program. I want to extend a special welcome to Vice Mayor Alpert today, who I know this is a very busy time. It seems like there's just tons of stuff going on. Liz and I have talked about using a little bit different format than we've used with this DSCA in the past, where we've had people present, so as to speak, and questions. And it was my suggestion, and I think kind of agreed that let me just kind of start off as a little bit of a combination of a conversation and some questions I would have. And then we will then turn it over to the board for additional questions. And as people attending as guests know, our protocol is the board members ask questions first. If there's some time remaining, our member reps would be first priority for asking questions, and not other guests, please. So, Vice Mayor, you and I have gotten to know each other fairly well over the last 5 years. And you know what a geek I am when it comes to data and so forth. And you know, we have DSCA areas about 0.8 of a square mile. We estimate there are about 12,000 people living in season in the DSCA area, probably going to 15,000-ish in the coming 3 or 5 years. It seems to me, as closely as I follow this, not a week goes by that there isn't seemingly another new project. You know, 18 units here, 16 units there, or whatever. As we speak, I just, notice there's 6 new eating establishments being established or reestablished along Boulevard of the Arts. So this development's coming. And I mentioned the hot weather we've had. It seems like it's gone on for months now. And we continue with these new projects to continue to cut down trees. I think I estimated with Mark Miller's help that we've kind of removed probably 500 trees in the Rosemary district alone. And on the money front, assessed valuations, which I understand are going to be mailed to property owners on the 18th of August this year, are up about 13%. So we've got these conflicting things going on. We've got rapid growth, increased revenues, if you will, but inflation. So it brings me to, talk about this budget maybe being a kind of a very interesting one. On one hand, it's kind of an opportunity budget because of the additional revenues, but seeing the opportunity to invest, anticipating our growth that we've already had. Let's start with one of the things that comes up next week is attainable housing ZTAs. That comes before the commission next Monday, and I understand from our phone call that you've received a briefing on that. Can you tell us your views on how that's kind of worked out in your opinion, what's going to be proposed?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, I think it's really a good plan because density, you want density in a downtown rather than sprawl. So, people are coming here to live. It's a good thing to put this density in the downtown. We're not increasing heights. I think the zoning text amendments, which will allow for some affordable housing, is a huge step in the right direction. Kind of the percentage where the staff has the amount of affordable housing, I think is a good one because there are actually two projects kind of waiting to be proposed if this gets passed, which means two projects with affordable housing. If you increase the percentage, then we won't get projects that allow for affordable housing and defeat the purpose of what we're trying to do. And, it may be not as much affordable housing as people would like, but it's better than none. So, it's the one way to get the private sector to do it.
And one thing you and I talked about on the phone and has been a matter of discussion at DSCA and maybe others is community workshops. And the planning board recommended that if a developer is availing themselves, taking benefit, so to speak, an earned benefit, that a community workshop be held for input. And because of that density increase, I mean, we're putting a heck of a lot more people. And I think that we've already met with Lucia and Ryan Chapterland to kind of talk about putting this in the schedule, so as to speak. So we're hoping that you're supportive of that.
Yeah, they put it in the schedule, just, with the caveat that if they're meeting the zoning criteria, you can't say you can't do the density, There could be some design elements, there could be things that, as you and I talked about, some nuanced things about that particular site that maybe the surrounding neighbors know about and the new developer coming in. But, I think it needs to be part of the process, but again, with the understanding that, you can't stop it if they meet the criteria.
Sure, we understand that it is still administrative.
Right.
Moving on to restaurants, bars, and nightclubs. Those ZTAs are working their way through the system. And one of the things on the table now is to make sure that there's harmony between any modified sound ordinances and that. So they may be slightly separate, but there is some interrelationship. And do you know where the sound ordinance stands?
I haven't gotten any information on that.
Yeah. I think when we would observe some of the tricky things here are rooftop bars, which are becoming more and more popular. We have had some less than ideal situations we don't know already with our elevation.
Right.
Turning to streetscape, again, quality of life. Fruitville is something that we see is somebody has put a couple $100,000 in the budget to maybe relook at what was investigated 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
Do you have any more details on that?
Well, I don't, other than, from what I understand, and I'm hoping I'm wrong, is that some of the, at least one of the roundabouts that would have been proposed to help the traffic flow, we've lost the right of way to be able to have enough space to do that. And I thought those were key. Now, if they can show us that they can still do it, I'm still a proponent personally, and I don't think that's what staff's gonna present, of making it one lane from Orange to 41. I think that's the best traffic flow. It makes for wider sidewalks, makes for a better connectivity between the Rosemary District and downtown, because, I mean, eventually it's all gonna be one district. And to have a 4-lane highway cutting through it just doesn't make sense. And it really, the traffic flows that the engineers had done several years ago showed that more traffic would actually get through than it does now. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it's because the traffic, and I can see Roger shaking his head because he understands what the roundabouts do. The traffic keeps flowing. They aren't stopping at a stoplight, creating a parking lot, and then they go again and stop at the next stoplight, creating a parking lot. So, it's stop and go rather than just this continuous flow. The other issue that was kind of a red herring issue is the idea, well, it's an evacuation route. So, we're going to cause problems because it's an evacuation route. But during the hurricane that preceded the proposal a few years ago, they actually had done traffic counts during an evacuation, during a hurricane. And guess what? The traffic was way down. The traffic counts were way down. Getting ready for a hurricane and leaving, people aren't driving around. So it would have caused no problems in terms of an evacuation route. So I still am in favor of doing that, so we can have a lot wider sidewalks. Otherwise, basically we're gonna try to carve it out of taking it out of bike lane, the narrow bike lane that we have there. And still is not gonna make for really wide sidewalks and a comfortable connectivity.
Yeah, and I think we've observed that we have already 2 approved new condo projects on Fruitville with a long parcel for sale. So
Right.
I think we might observe, or I personally observe, if there was ever a time to rethink this.
It's now.
However it goes,
Right.
it would be now. And that DSCA did, and DSA and RDA all supported.
Support
Yeah, I
for
know.
one lane.
Now, in saying that, I know this is controversial.
Yeah, right.
And because I was there firsthand, and so, but I think we're pleased to see the money in the budget to
Yeah.
at least consider this. And the other part of it was, it seemed like we are right on the edge of getting an $8 million grant 4 years ago to help with it.
We got the grant and we had to give it back. I mean, it still makes me ill to think about that we got the grant to do it, which would have been just transformational, and had to give it back. So it makes it much harder to get a grant next time,
Well, speaking of
Yeah.
streetscapes, another project that DSCA has advocated for is the Boulevard of the Arts in town. And we know we didn't get the grant. Are you aware where that stands as far as moving that ahead in segments or whatever?
Well, I know that, that we did put in, I don't have the budget in front of me, so I can't say how much, but we did put money in there to move that along, because those are important corridors, especially the Bay, getting more and more finished, we still have a long way to go there.
Yeah, and the opportunity for canopy trees,
For what?
canopy trees
Yeah.
along it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then I note that there also was money for undergrounding and utilities where there's some poles there, the Leaning Tower of Pisa at the moment.
Right.
So, well, what I had hoped to do here was kind of kick off the conversation and the questions. Now let's go around the room to other board members. Ken, what have you got?
In the last couple of days, I've had a couple of conversations about the future of downtown. And interestingly enough, I had lunch with Marty Hilton today, who's the CEO of Architecture Sarasota, and they're putting together a lecture series on perspectives on downtown Sarasota's future. Dave and I had a conversation yesterday about the growth of downtown, the population increase. We know the numbers, but we don't know who is coming and we don't know why they're coming. And I think that's an important thing for us to find out for our future, because it's going to affect the character of the downtown. Do you know of any group in Sarasota, including the city administration, who's doing a study of who is coming and driving the growth of downtown, as well as the increase in real estate values or costs?
I don't, but I wonder if the Realtors Association.
I think that's a good start, yeah.
Might have an idea. And so
I think it's an important question that you guys need to ask in your discussions about the development of downtown. Who's coming and why?
right. And if we can get a couple projects that have increased density, that'll change the character of who's coming. So instead of one 4,000 square foot unit, have 4,000 square foot.
Incidentally, one of the speakers that they're trying to get to the lecture series is Andreas Duani.
Oh, wonderful,
Yeah,
wonderful. If you get him, I would love to come to that.
well, it's transformational, and what he did, what he gave us in the new
Great.
urbanist code was transformational for downtown. Regardless of what side of the issue you're on, it's changed downtown.
Moving, Bob.
Yeah, there was a story
Mhm.
a few days ago about the cost of installing the artwork at 10th Street and 14th Street. The cost of I guess the cost of installing is more expensive than the cost of the artwork itself.
Yeah.
And personally, I think we here at Broadway would like to see artwork at 10th Street in the roundabout. And I believe it's coming back in front of the commission. Do you have any sense of how you're going to proceed with that?
Well, I mean, my preference is that we come up with the money and we do it, because that's been our program, to do art in the roundabouts, and I hate to see us back off of that, because of, the inflation, the supply chain issues, that
Obviously,
sort
the
of
costs
thing.
have gone up across the board for everything. I mean,
Everything,
we're all
yeah.
struggling, with our budgets because of insurance and the cost of the new roof, what have you. And installing that artwork somewhere else, it's still gonna cost some money to install it.
Somebody's, you
So
have to
let's
put
put it in
the,
the roundabout.
yeah.
Can I ask
To
a
put it
second?
on something.
Sure.
We just received today from Kibling Horn, the zoning changes for the Bay Park. There's gonna be a community meeting August 15th. But when, I know the answer, I believe, but I know people here are concerned about Centennial Park. Are there any planned structures for Centennial Park that you know of?
Where not that I know of, looking at along the canal there, where
Yes.
they put in the boats, like, for now, like food truck, but in the next phase, they're there is, there is planned restaurant.
It's on the south side of 10th
Yeah,
Street.
right,
But,
right.
the Centennial Park, which is primarily parking, I think they're gonna extend the parking there. But,
Right.
and I haven't seen, I sort of track it pretty closely, any plans for any structures in Centennial Park,
No.
parking garage or anything like that.
Unless they, unless
But that would have to
people have
go,
been talking about it, haven't, brought it forward yet, but, the idea is to make it, kind of improve and expand a little bit the, the boat launching
Exactly.
area so that boaters have a little more movement.
there's always concern that, there's
Yeah.
gonna be a 16-story parking garage, which concerns people here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They said, unless they're planning to do it later, I don't know.
Patrick?
Yeah, but just to follow up a bit on the Bay Park question there. So as it's being built out, is the commitment to keep the pedestrian walkway around the channel as they start building all the concession areas there? Right now, the current bayfront MRT, goes right along the bayfront there. There's no structure between pedestrians and the water other than rocks and stuff like that.
I mean, as far as I know, Patrick, but I don't, I didn't see anything on the final plans, it may be different, but they're doing that perimeter and they're gonna, work on the shoreline and that sort of thing, so.
Well,
I'm not sure.
That's asking the question, it's an important issue. I've seen other cities where they've taken the bayfront and they put in dining and entertainment along there, and then they allow them to extend out to there. And then we lose the pedestrian walkway along the bay. And that has been there, and it was deeded that, or dedicated that way. And I'm just asking if you will continue to support keeping the pedestrian pathway close to the bay.
Well, there's no
That's
plans to put, restaurants all along there anyway, that's just the corner, kind of the south of the canal where the boats launch and, just that, making that row kind of a restaurant row.
Given that this week ago we had the July 4th boat races, and the boats were all parked in the Van Williams parking lot. So is that July 4th boat race is going to go away? They're going to go somewhere else than downtown Sarasota?
I don't know. I don't know what, I guess that'll be up to the boat race people or if we can accommodate them somewhere.
Well, I would think the commission would want to consider, if you look, they
We're
take
not
up.
gonna keep the parking lot.
I know,
Okay,
so,
yeah,
okay, so that's,
that I can assure
it'll
you.
go away then, thank you. We talked about the need for street trees. Back when we had the tree advisory committee, they recommended an urban forest program, which I believe you supported on that. I understand the communications with the sustainability manager for the city. He's saying that the program that he has limited dollars to work with in their phase two. $32,000 was all that was allocated for them, and it's nowhere near to do what's needed to be done. And my question is the health and safety of the residents, people who walk on our sidewalks, a high enough priority to warrant maybe more than $32,000 in the budget for programs that will get us more trees versus street trees?
I would think so. I didn't realize it was just 32,000 for.
Would you bring that up when the
Yeah.
budget
Yeah.
comes before you? Thank you.
Roger?
Kind of a philosophical question about the economic health of downtown. We know that, or at least I think we know, that there are fewer office workers commuting in, that at least 3 restaurants are no longer open for lunch because that traffic is not available. Name the restaurants if you like, but and so downtown appears to be emerging or evolving into a restaurant and entertainment district more than anything else, with some hybrid in retail. So I guess my question is philosophically, is there anything the city should be doing or thinking about downtown and its economic health?
Well, I mean, I don't, my sense is the downtown is not having problems with its economic health. We still, when you go out on the street, there are lots of people, but mostly it's Lower Main. I think doing the Main Street project where we can widen the sidewalks, going further east, I think having that, housing complex coming in there where, the Hollywood 20 is next to the Hollywood 20, I think that's going to make a difference. So all of these things, I think, will add to the economic health of downtown and, more amenities and hopefully more shops, not just restaurants.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good point about the East End evolving and needing to redo Main Street. That probably is a higher priority than some other.
Right.
I had heard at one time that, one of the things we don't have, particularly if the Hyatt is going to be demolished, that's our one convention space, quote unquote convention space, not for a McCormick Center convention space, but I had heard the idea floated at one time of trying to convince the post office to move and use that as a convention space, sort of about an economic driver. And that a convention space appropriately sized as to support our hotels and economic. Have you heard of land that would be available that would make sense?
I had not heard that at all, and I'm not sure that's enough space for, a convention space. I mean, you look at the one in Tampa, which is really not quite large enough either for, because there are constraints on land there for really large conventions. I mean, they certainly have conventions there, but they, and I don't think the post office property
Yeah, well,
is
I
quite
heard
large enough.
Virginia Haley talk about it as mine, and I don't know what the right size is by a long shot, but
Right.
that would be one economic driver or a extension of the university, with a downtown campus or something like that. But with the county commission building, folks moving in a year and a half, that's going to be another sucking sound, so as to speak, on activity.
Yeah, exactly, that and, and I don't know how much but I would think it would benefit downtown. From what I understand, the property that was purchased where Williams Parker law offices are, they've purchased a really large, amassed a large group of properties. So it's gonna, their plan is, which, has to go through a long process yet, but is for, I think, hotel, residences, and retail there. I think they're envisioning like a whole row of shops and things. So all of these things ought to add to the economic health of our downtown.
That along with the business and acquisition of the county property.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Ken?
David, when I was on the commission, this issue came up also. There were several efforts to create a convention center downtown. The challenge was, and the reason it never went anywhere, was that the business community, development community, wanted the city to pay for it. And they would get the benefit, the economic benefits. And that didn't work for the city commission. So there never has been, as far as I know, a proposal that has dealt with that issue of like, who's going to pay for it? Is the taxpayer going to pay for it, the developer benefit, or what?
Okay, we got, Peter, anything done this way? Member reps, Victor.
Mr. Alpert, my name is Victor Nixir, and I represent the Boulevard.
Which one?
Victor, I represent the Boulevard,
Oh, okay.
which is located.
Okay, yeah, I know where you're
from. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I think we've met before in the past. It's
Yes.
a pleasure to meet you again. We recently found out that you're our representative Well, that's.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, representative, yeah, I'm sorry, I was thinking of something else.
You're our representative. And by the
Yeah.
way, I had the same problem with David and the mayor when we asked who our representative was.
It's a Boulevard of the Arts right there, it's a funky,
Yeah, it's
job.
like, yeah, you never know, you know, because mostly on everything, east of 41, I'm not, you know, so.
Well, I'm a 3-year immigrant from Mississippi who has now come to make his life, the last part of it, I guess, in Sarasota. We'd like to get to know you. And we've had the opportunity in the past to talk to the mayor and to Jen Ahern and also to Nick Terrell. We've had wonderful conversations. Would you be willing to come and join us in a conversation about your view of where we would go?
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
We'll get in touch, make that happen.
Yeah, just get in touch with me at, do you have my city email address? We can set up a time.
Ms. Wallenberg will be the person.
Yes, yeah,
Well, we look forward to having you.
okay, thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to go talk with anybody.
and I would, let me come back to, you know, one of the most contentious issues I see on the horizon is, you know, the combination of the sound matter, which has been kind of off and on. Mr. Fournier has been working on that, but it's backburnered. He was looking for direction, but I just see we're gonna have to, that's gonna be tricky. And I think, you know, we've got to thread the needle on the vibrancy and sustainability thing. And I think that to get that right and get the restaurants and bars, there was a question asked on the restaurant bars, that the proposal on the table would, bars could be by right, so as to speak. The question was asked, Brian Chaplin, well, does that mean there could be a bar every second business? And he said, yes. So the question is, on all of this quality of life thing, whether it be sound or character of a neighborhood or whatever you want to call it, this is where we're going to really need to work together on this, because it is going to be tricky as heck and contentious as heck. And I think DSCA is kind of committed to try and facilitate that. We've already facilitated kind of one workshop, and we look forward to that. But the good news I think I see on the bars, restaurants thing, it's going to take a couple, it won't go to the planning board until the third week in September. So there's, you know, some time there before it comes to the commission. I would ask for your support in trying to find that balanced way of addressing this and finding the right templates. I think I saw some emails today of, hopefully on some of this stuff, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are things we could, dare I say, plagiarize, and, you know, to keep our city a special place, special space, as somebody said, not just another space in Florida. Jim.
Hi, Liz. Liz and I go way back. I think I donated to your very first campaign, and we're still friends. I represented Joel this time around, and my big beef, you probably know, is the sidewalk clearance on Main Street. I have petitioned Mr. Robinson, I have petitioned Nick, and just about everybody else about the congestion on Lower Main. And in their wisdom, you were on the board, led by Hagan, they narrowed the clearance to 5 feet, 5 feet from the edge of the building. But there is still no enforcement. There is still a keyboard player there who sticks out, and then further he puts his bucket for tips. And people are tripping on this stuff, and absolutely nobody is doing this. He's never been cited, and he's there every single day and every single night. Is there something that you can do about clearing Lower Main, giving us, you know, I wanted 7 feet, but we don't even have the 5 feet. And it has to be from the building edge. He is against the building, so now we're squeezed in a gauntlet between them. It has to be from the building out. That's
Well, isn't he in the alcove there? But
well,
so it's
part of
just
him is in the
yeah.
alcove, but it's from the building edge out, and he sticks out about 3 feet with his piano keyboard. Now, when he was playing in the in the apron across from the ice cream store, because it cuts out into the parking spaces, he's clear of the traffic, but then he keeps moving back and cluttering the traffic. So the congestion on Lower Main is intolerable, in my opinion. Could you do something about that? Thank you.
I will look at it again, Jim, but I do have to tell you, you're the only person in the entire city who ever complains to me about that. You know, because like if you go out and sing.
Does that make
I
it?
can't walk by
Does that
that.
make it
Absolutely.
illegitimate?
I mean, but who do you complain to? Because nothing ever gets done.
Okay, well,
You know,
nobody else has
decide
ever
that.
mentioned it to me.
Okay.
So if you said, open up a can of worms.
Jeez.
Okay, Cheryl?
First, on that issue, I have a friend, disabled friend, who's on some kind of committee for disabled
Oh, yeah, the
people.
disability.
Disability,
Yeah, right.
and he has complained about it because his wheelchair cannot get down Lower Main.
Because it doesn't fit,
Because
it's less than, it doesn't fit through there?
He has to be the only one going
he
down at
has to
that
be
time.
the only one
No
going,
traffic
and
going
you
up.
can't have two-way traffic. Everybody has to see him
And
And
stop.
anyway, so there should be some comment coming from this group.
Okay.
And I agree with Jim. But what I wanted to ask you is that, and I probably should know that, I'm Cheryl Walker from 100 Central.
Okay.
I should know this, but you said you weren't going to have any really high-rise buildings, but what is the status of the building across the street from the parking garage?
The Obsidian, is still working its way through the process. I don't know where it's gonna go.
Going to plan.
It's, you know, it's administratively approved or disapproved. And then my, my guess is no matter whether they approve it or they disapprove it, somebody's gonna appeal it, and then it'll come before the planning board and the city commission. So there's still a ways to go with it, but,
What's your personal opinion?
well, my personal opinion is I don't know yet, because if they're following the zoning, doesn't matter what my personal opinion is, if they're following the rules. I think I would feel better personally if it were housing lots of people, not 14 families. Truthfully, you know, and I haven't, you know, I would feel better if it had retail all across the bottom, you know. So, you know, I want to see what the final product is that comes before me before I weigh in on the whole situation.
Thank you.
And I think that is about it. We certainly appreciate your time and stopping by. And is there any advice you would have for DSCA, how we could fulfill our role better? Anything
I think you guys do a great job, so, you know, there's nothing, you know, nothing I can approve, and David's little statistics, you know. No, I mean, I know, you know, but it is helpful. It is helpful because it gives us a better picture of what's going on. So, you know, I think this is a really involved group and, you know, so I do take, you know, your opinions seriously because I know you're people who are involved in the community to make things happen.
Could I ask one last question?
Yes.
One last question. This Blue Ribbon Van Wezel Task Force, are they going to have some sort of a group to focus them like the Architect Selection Task Force did?
I know city staff is gonna be the liaisons, you know, so they'll have a liaison from city staff, yes. And I think we have somebody, who is, you know, going to be like a facilitator.
Mhm.
And I know we
A
have.
professional?
Yes, and I know we have, you know, I think, don't hold me to that, but that's what I recall. And I know we have a professional, also consultant, besides the people that are on the committee that know about big venues and how to run them and the numbers and that sort of thing. We also had put in somebody else as a consultant who has that background as well. So, so I feel pretty good that we've got people on board, and sorry, Ken, who know what they're doing and, that we can rely on their judgment. I was like really blown away by the quality of people who applied and the number of people that we have in our community with incredible backgrounds and incredible experience. So it was, it was really wonderful to see because, when we originally came up with the criteria, people were saying, you're not going to be able to find people here that are like that. And that's why we said, well, we'll open it up to outside the, the city and county. And nobody's going to want to come here to do that. But fortunately, we had all the talent right here. So I'm looking forward to see what they do.
Thanks.
Great, well, thank you again.
Thank you all.
Okay, thanks for coming.
And Jim, I will look into it.
Thank you. Tomorrow's a work day, right? Right.
Yeah, yes. Tomorrow's Thursday, right? Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Okay, folks, moving ahead, old business, Bob, between you and Patrick and whomever, can you give us an update on our survey work, please?
Yeah, as we were emailing back and forth today, but, my feeling is that within the next week or 10 days, we should sort of button this thing down. There are a couple of associations that we can contact to get a response from. I think some of them are important. They're larger associations that are more traditional, like Broadway, Promenade, Alinari, Renaissance, 100 Central. So my thought is within a week or 10 days, we're going to try to get it done. We can go into business. I believe we have contacts now, up-to-date contacts at all the associations. And as far as the percentage of responses, I think Patrick gets that information, so.
Yeah, we're right about 50% that have completed them, but there are several that are, as I said, in works that they've been in contact and says, okay, I've lost the link, let me start over again, et cetera. So she is out there beating the bushes and trying to move things along. So.
And it was interesting on one of the associations, I won't say which one, that they were a little miffed that we didn't get, Disco wasn't as involved with something, the sound ordinance or something. And so they were sort of dragging their feet. And I tried to make the point that, it's to their benefit to fill out the survey because it's great information that they're going to have going forward as we're all struggling with all the cost of roofing, staffing, service. We have a garage door that's been down for 2 weeks now. And apparently there's only one tech in all of Sarasota that can fix it. So, these are a lot of issues that we're all dealing with, and that survey will help people put in perspective, particularly to explain to their boards, to explain to their residents, what is going on, why their fees are going up, why they're getting special assessments, et cetera. So Sheila is, she actually works here 2 days a week. And so I can work with her while she's here. And she has made us the contact. So that's where we are in a nutshell. And as I said, I think a week or 10 days we should be done. We'd like to get this thing out by September, I would think. So as associations start working on their budgets for next year, I think it's going to give them pretty good guidance about how they can proceed.
Okay. Any other comments on that question? Yes, ma'am.
We're working on our budgets now. We'd love to have get information. And September, we'll probably have it all settled.
Is your budget annual starting in January?
Yes,
And when does your board approve? It's typically October.
October.
Hmm.
But we
Well, if
do
we
want
could, honestly,
preparation for that.
Patrick could answer this question better than I can, but once we have all this information, and we put together an average survey, how long would that take? I mean, is that done almost automatically?
There's a lot of manual putting into a report format to be distributed. So what we've done in the past is once we've got it all into spreadsheets, we can start going through the data. We come up with what are some key questions, highlight questions, and here's some average information. So things that we can kind of release publicly, et cetera. The comparison data is really got to be all together, but we will work on pulling it together as quickly as we can, and that's why the target by the 1st of September, I think, is around what we can try to finish up that. If we get something sooner,
Absolutely.
that we maybe will get something that you can manipulate and take a look at.
Or is it possible to see a draft?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is actually, we can create a spreadsheet, and if you have people who can look at that.
I can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, moving along, President's report and Kathy, city update, Kathy is out of town. I think a lot of the things I would say that came up in the conversation with Liz, I mean, there's a lot going on. Sustainable housing ban next week, the bars, restaurants thing, sound ordinance, the approval of the budget, and so forth. On the bars, restaurants thing, there's a period of time now, they've floated what they have as their ideas, but it's going to not be before the planning board in 6 weeks. So there's time to reflect on that and have comments for it or not. The one thing I am lobbying for, and I think others, is to make sure there's harmony between any sound ordinance changes that have been long coming and the bars and restaurant. And then the other thing that I didn't bring up is I'm told the people in charge of the special events for the city, they are looking at their special events policies and processes. And as it turns out, there's 3 different departments involved. So planning is running lead on one, the events people are on another, and the sound is more Bob Fournier, so one of the observations is the collective we can do a better job of harmonizing things and getting people out of silos, if you know what I mean. So I think I will be looking at that. I think, as you know, I'm at most of these meetings, and sometimes it's pretty complicated stuff, but I'll be passing information to folks on that. And on the budget, we are trying to do what we can on Boulevard of the Arts and 10th, given the money issues. The good news there is that the city seems committed to get the drawings quite far along. So when you find the money, the plan, shall we say, will have been vetted and largely agreed. So it seems to me that Marlin is pretty committed to try and somehow shake loose some money to find a creative way to do some of this stuff. I think that's all I've got. Moving on to Ken, Arts and Cultural update.
There is going to be another tour of the Van Wezel Hall on August 24th at 11 a.m. Right now, it appears that it'd be mainly people from McClellan Park. We may have a few spaces. We try to keep it to 12 people. So if anybody's interested, let me know. The last tour, was it May, I think, really opened some eyes. It's amazing when you get to see the nitty-gritty of the hall, how you see it very differently. And I remember two things that came out of that was the acoustic problems, which originate with the architecture of the building itself. And the other is lack of ADA compliance and how it's almost impossible to comply with ADA. So anyway, I think it'd be very valuable if you know people who are interested. The other thing is, and I mentioned this once before, is that the city has published its public art plan, its proposed public art plan. It will go before the city commission later this month. It's not on the agenda next week, but I assume it'll be later this month. David and I have talked about it. It's 100 pages. It's got a very high fog index, and I'm going to calculate it to figure it out because it's very hard to read. It has a lot of action verbs in it and very little indication of who's responsible for doing what. But it does seem to move, shift the responsibility for public art from the Public Art Committee and the commission to the staff, but they don't have any staff. So I think for the time being, I'm just going to be quiet about it and listen and see how it goes, because it may crash and burn all by itself. That's it.
Oh, okay. And moving on to other word.
There was a question. I don't know if I'm allowed to speak.
Barbara, let's do it at the end, please. Moving on to Jamie, events and update, please.
Yeah.
Put it up.
Are you able to, yeah. So we have a preliminary flyer ready. The next workshop is gonna be Thursday, October 19th from 4 to 7. It's gonna be at Goey Hall again, at the Church of the Redeemer, same place that we had last time. And this one is called Sarasota's Rapid Growth, Boom, Bubble, or Bust. So we're gonna explore how we as a community can keep in front of the growth to ensure a viable, vibrant, and livable city for all to live, work, and play. As the city rapidly expands population and housing density, the seminar asks, what's next and how do we keep from screwing this up? So we have a lot of really good speakers. We have an attorney, somebody from Michael Saunders, actually Drayton Saunders from Michael Saunders, speak about real estate. Aaron Silk will be joining us from the economic development. We have an insurance person, Joe Thompson is one of our associate members. We have Pat Robinson from the city of Sarasota, the chief of police, Rex Trochet. And then we're gonna have somebody from the DID to discuss how these changes have affected businesses downtown, so.
And the working concept on this is, you want to talk a little bit about, this idea is emerging, but the kind of 10 by 10.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a little bit different format. Instead of having the panel up front and all the questions are set up and then the moderator asks the questions, each speaker is gonna have approximately 10 minutes to give a presentation. And then we're gonna move on to the next person, so on and so forth. So the moderator's job isn't gonna be really that complicated this time. Just move on to the next one, and then of course we'll leave plenty of time, which we're realizing at the end of these seminars, we probably need a lot more time than we've been allowing. Especially some of the topics are pretty, get pretty charged up. Yes,
Has people here been to the Michael Halfland's 10 by 10 meetings?
Not recently, but I have been.
I mean, and that kind of frankly intrigued me as something kind of punchy.
Yeah, his is more, I mean, that's a great format, but his is just people talk about anything and everything.
Yeah.
We're trying to put them together. So one of the things is, as the committee is putting together the kind of themed questions, I would think if others, given this panelist, if you have ideas or questions or topics you want this panelist to address, I guess send them to Jamie or to here. And then our team will put it together. And so the presenters will be given some topics that
kind of
our audience wants to hear them address, not just
Yes.
10
What they
minutes
wanna
of
talk
them
about.
talking about their staffing.
Yeah, we thought it was a pretty good lineup, and we're pretty pleased that we were able to get who we wanted very much.
So in the next month, kind of flush this out and make sure we've got something that will make sense and we can pull off. But I think it's an intriguing concept that we do have the speakers locked in, and I think the police chief is always a good draw. Drayton Saunders, some name recognition here that may help us, and of course with Pat Robinson could help. I mean, not with the other folks.
Sure. Insurance is always a hot topic right now. So.
Too, and then the county economic development CEO, or whatever Eric's title is, talking about that.
I do ask if you guys are gonna come, please sign up ahead of time. That makes our life a lot easier rather than people coming to the front not signed up, because we've been really close to selling out on each one of these, so it gives us a good idea of the head count.
And offline, we're gonna talk about money with Patrick and
Yes.
Clark, you know, about how our budget is looking and events. And we've got a holiday event where we may have a partial sponsor for
Yes.
this year. So begin to even think about a date for the holiday. I don't know if we.
It's the same as our December meeting.
Typically what we've
Yeah,
done is the
usually
first
that's what we do.
Wednesday in
We just do
December.
it here.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, Patrick, green space?
Yeah, let me just make this a bigger here. Okay, so just as a quick update, we haven't had a meeting, but I was trying to, one of the things, we were going to have a meeting to engage with the city's sustainability manager on a number of projects, but they're still in the percolation stage, I guess. So Jeff Wittenberg had spoke with us last year about the city's green building policy, and I guess given the feedback, not only down to residents, but other businesses, it's been put into more of an incentive program, and they're revamping it that way. So I don't know how that would have much teeth, but it'll be coming along. I did ask him about the urban forest program, and this is where we found out that this was handed off out of what was the arborist office, and then so the Parks and Rec didn't pick it up, so now it's over in planning, but it's only got 32,000 funding planned for next year, and that's way below that. They said the scope of what was the commission had envisioned and what the residents had envisioned is being cut back. And to me, without that program out there, not much is going to happen. Now, the development services through the city arborist has announced their city mature tree program. But essentially what they've done is teamed up with a company that sells the trees and said, we'll donate $500 towards that tree out of the tree mitigation funds. So that's how it has to be done. So there is ability for people to buy more mature trees that are more costly as opposed to buying the little 3 or 4 inch ones. You can buy a larger tree, at least getting $500, and then you've got to put in at least 100. So we talk about a $600 plus tree, which would be a nice size. Now, whether that can be useful for any downtown condos, if you've got enough landscaping, I don't know. Check it out. Anyway, that's available there. And then David and I had the opportunity to meet with Bob Bunting, who has been selected to be on the Purple Ribbon Committee for his knowledge about climate adaptation. He heads up the Climate Adaptation Center, and he's very interested in how we talk about the impacts of design on that. We all know about heat index and the impacts of that, but the size of the buildings, and as the pathways between buildings gets narrower, we lose a cooling effect. If you have nice tree-lined streets in the evening after the sun goes down, the wind is blowing, and the trees provide like an air conditioning, the buildings cool off and the streets cool off. Without that, everything stays hot, and the next day you're starting at 80 degrees on up. And so this is becoming, and Kathy's not here, but she had recommended we look at this as a health and safety program. And so what we discussed is Bob could be available for a workshop in November, and we might do it similar to what we've done with some of the other workshops at the Sarasota Foundation there on State Street, where we could do it. Of course, it would be a later afternoon, not an evening session, but that's one of the trade-offs there of having a free space. So we'll look into that and get more details. Steve. Any questions?
Okay, Peter, homeless?
Okay, because of vacation schedules and Jamie's a problem. She's not supposed to be back until next week if she shows up today. But anyway, we haven't had one of our scheduled meetings, but a number of meetings have been occurring. David and I went to a meeting with the other morning, had coffee with Deidre Jones of the hot teams and got information. A couple of things that are coming up. One is I've gotten concerned with regard to the heat and what's happening to the homeless situation when the temperatures start to get in heat indexes over 100. And surprisingly enough, we haven't had a real problem with it. There are a number of shelter opportunities available. There's a number of, mostly on the fringes of the city and the county. And the county has organizations that are making themselves accessible to the population, including those who are in downtown. The overall assessment is that they have a good shelter backup, so that when some of the downtown police officers, hot teams, find that there's an indication that heat may be a problem, they can get these folks some help. The other thing that has become very obvious is that much of the information we are getting about homeless out of the media is not local information. Last week, the Sarasota Herald Tribune ran multiple story pages on the homeless problems in Phoenix and what's happening in Phoenix and so forth. So, and looking at this, we have a lot of anecdotal information. We have very little evidence-based driven data information to make assessments by. And in contacting Suncoast Partnership, they had a rough year this year, even getting a point in time count that was accurate for Sarasota because of some of the changes that they had. So they published a point in time 2022 count, which probably isn't valid in any way whatsoever and is even difficult to use for comparison purposes. But so the conundrum is that we are addressing, trying to come up with a better plan for getting out the information into the media. Carrie Seidman did an article not too long ago on some of the problems with this. She's a friend, of DSCA. She comes to some of our meetings. She talks to us and so forth. Maybe getting her to propose a different approach in the media, at least from print media, and then from maybe some of the local media, the television stations or radio stations, to do a little bit more on the plight of the homeless. Because in truth, folks, Sarasota is at the top of the list of providing services and opportunities for people without shelter. We're doing a terrific job. Last week I learned, remember when we used to have encampments all throughout the city, all over the place? We don't have them. We have one person pitching a tent somewhere, and not 10 or 12. In truth, the railroad track still can be a little bit of a problem, but please know that your hot teams, once a month, get together at 3 a.m. in the morning, all 8 and 10 of them, and they go out and they start going to these places to find out what's happening before 5 a.m. because they've realized that the people who are without shelter at 5 a.m. start to disperse because opportunities are coming available and people are waking up and they have their own private little network too. So the other thing is we are doing a great job in making placements for folks. We used to kid about, we had a bus program, buy them a ticket, give them a ticket and send them to Indianapolis somewhere. That is happening, but it's happening in a planned way. We've sent 8 or 10 people out in the last 6 months on bus tickets where there was a family waiting for them at the end of the route. Not just, get on a bus and good luck. it's a one-way ticket. So we need to get some of that out, because there are still people who say to me, and probably to you, based on an aggressive panhandler 2 years ago, that we have a terrible problem here. Well, we don't have a terrible, we do have, I'm not saying we don't have a problem, we do have a problem. But they're manageable, and we continue to move forward on them. So more will be coming on that at a later time, and I think try to be positive and look for the positive things. And when you find that one guy who's sleeping on the sidewalk and his shots are a little lower than we like to think shots ought to be worn, please know that there's probably already somebody, one of the police officers already knows about this, and they're starting to make the educate and encourage and enforce contact throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Then Roger on transportation.
Okay, well, of course, we were disappointed to learn that the grants for improvement on some of the city boulevards were not approved, and we'll be looking for alternative funding kinds of opportunities. One thing I guess I should comment on is the Gulf Stream roundabout. I use it now 6 to 8 times a day, so I'm feeling pretty confident about using the roundabout. It's really highly efficient. It's cut my drive time to the airport by 10 minutes and my drive time downtown by 5 minutes, which is interesting to me at least. It's been completed now a month, in which everything is in place, and changes are not being made. And during that month, I believe there's either 7 or 8 accidents that have occurred, fender benders, in most cases, one a little bit more serious. And we have videos of these accidents. And so those are being shared with FDOT. The one I looked at this morning was a motorcycle who was parallel with the car and weaved across the lane into the car. Not much you can do about that kind of an accident. Most of them are, a couple of non-yields. Now that's pretty important, non-yields. But at this point, it's a pretty highly efficient processing of a really large number of vehicles.
No bikers going straight over the circle, like we had
Not yet.
earlier.
Main Street, orange.
That was a Main Street, yeah. I have seen one vehicle just ignore everything and speed to this thing. And didn't hit anybody, wasn't a lot of people there, but it sure was disconcerting.
It's on video.
Yeah. So, that's my report.
Yeah, one thing I would say, kind of transportation oriented is Broxton Harvey is making a parking presentation, special workshop on the 14th to the City Commission. And I'm hearing pretty good things about Broxton as far as him bringing some good experiences. Roger, I think you're hearing the same thing, so let's hear about. The only possible disappointment I might have is that we're talking about mobility as the overarching objective, right? That involves parking, that involves maybe micro-transit. And one thing that seems to be missing in some of the city initiatives is re-looking at an I-ride kind of deal. Do you know it? Is there any talk?
There is extensive talk about it, and I've looked at various vendors. And of course, the trolley has been phenomenally successful. The other, of course, good news, I guess, yeah, it is good news, is that the SCAT is going to provide a bus from the airport down to the downtown hotels. So that's something the city doesn't have to engage in at this particular point. So we'll have that north-south line to downtown the airport, plus the trolley going across the bridge to those communities.
Right.
No, and, you know, in the, how would I put this? I think parking is responsible for what is going to happen here in terms, I served on the selection committee for the trough, and that was put together by parking. And they are probably going to do a selection committee at some point when they get the funding figured out and various sources of funding for microtransit and what to do with parking.
Okay. All right. Victor, go ahead, sir. Quick.
Just a
quick,
question
please.
for Rodney. Just a question for Rodney. I wanted to know whether or not with the loss of funding at DOTA and 41, whether or not there's any backup plan in order to address the concerns of any changes that were contemplated originally by the city.
I can't answer your question. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's compare notes after the meeting. Okay, zoning, let me speak to the community workshops. You know, it appears from what Liz said that it is going to move ahead for when attainable bonuses are, that they, maybe reluctantly, but it looks like the city's gonna go along with holding community workshops. And I think to the credit of all those involved in our advocacy and diplomacy on this, it looks like it may have, we may have pulled something off that I'm not sure we thought we could, but it's a foot in the door on community workshops. Right, Patrick?
I haven't found the words community workshops added in the red line.
It is. Yep.
Okay, I haven't found that page yet. Okay.
Yep.
I'll
Okay.
get to that. Good.
Okay. And then Bob on the Bay Park.
Bay Park will be a community workshop, August 15th, 5:30 at the Bay Park. What's that facility in the back?
Bayfront Road?
Yeah,
Bayfront Road. something.
Date again? Which date again?
August 15th at 5:30. And it'll be covering the
Tuesday.
right-of-way vacation. I think some of the roadways, they want to make some modifications to. And they'll have, you know, all that information will be at this workshop. Phase one, of course, is not included in it because it's completed.
Is this closing Van Ways away between Tampa and Boulevard?
That may be part of the discussion, yes, there is.
If that's a significant negative impact on the grid. I mean, Roger, everything I heard about traffic patterns is, you have major arteries and then you have small roads, et cetera. And Van Ways Away is a link between Boulevard of the Arts and 10th Street roundabouts, and is the only link west to the trail. We've had accidents at Boulevard of the Arts at 41 that with police and ambulance, everything, it's blocked up. And
Then I suggest you attend.
well, I will, but I'm just trying to learn if there's anyone else in residences anywhere in the Rosemary area, is to take a hard look at that. That kind of can be disruptive, and for what reasons? Giving up, vacating our roadways is a very, very serious concern. And so I just would highlight that folks take a look at that. Even if you don't live there and drive there, it's going to affect how, you know, traffic patterns of people throughout there, of that whole area. And as more and more housing is being built, both at the Quay and then with the new condos going in, replacing the Hyatt and Auteur, there's significantly more units and traffic between those two. And if you don't have that outlet, 10th Street, it's a significant negative impact.
Okay.
Future potential.
Anything else, Bob? CCNA does not meet during July and August, but one thing I can tell you is Richard Harris and I, the president of CCNA, I think are developing pretty decent relationship that I think in the past where potentially the relationship with CCNA was different. Let's just say, I think there are some roads now where he and I have some more communication. They were participated in this with Patrick and me and Lucia and Ryan Chapdelaine and Steve Cover, who was Jim Ludwig and Richard Harris on the community workshop. So they kind of assisted, shall we say, in a way in doing this. Rosemary Park, wonders never cease. Pam and I received, we have now a timeline for the completion of it that is hot off the press. This came in hours ago, and the end date is December 15th. Now, I don't know if we're gonna take bets on it being done by December 15th, but we've got a 27 line item, Gantt chart-ish kind of thing. First time we've ever seen a schedule, and if we see it before Christmas, it'll be a good thing. We'll have 5 new restaurants open, maybe a park. It'll be, could be quite a holiday festivities there, so cross your fingers, and we have Jerry Vogel committing to this, kind of committing, I guess. So that's really a good thing. I think that's all I have about the Rosemary. Turn you Annika and Jamie. Hi, Annika.
Hey, Ramona. All right, so I'm the assistant liaison. Jamie.
Come on over.
Hey. Hey. Okay, so I'm with Berger Simpson. We do construction defect litigation. I get in marketing, represent associations and condominiums with shoddy workmanship. So you can reach out to us. Deanna is going to be on the next panel. She's an amazing speaker, very knowledgeable, so you will not get bored at all. And so now for the platinum members, we have Paul with ServPro. You want to?
Paul, what have you got new for us?
Well, here's what's new, right? We're not gonna talk about hurricanes, although we are your emergency services provider for all of Sarasota County. What I do wanna talk about is we had a really nice event 2 weeks ago down at Seasons 52. It's called the SRQ VIP Social. And it is a group of vendors, 4 of us, who partnered together to put on an event targeting board members of all the associations in the area. It was meant to be a relaxed atmosphere where you could come in, enjoy some food and beverage. More importantly, get to know other board members of the various communities. We had our inaugural event. It went over very well. Cheryl was there. We had good representation. We had good representation from Condo on the Bay. David was there. Appreciate that. But we're looking for more members to come. And so our challenge is communicating that out in an effective and efficient way. Voila, email. So I'm meeting with the other sponsors. We're going to be looking for ways to leverage groups such as DSCA perhaps to be able to send out information where we don't get your email unless you give it to us. And so if you see something coming in the next week or two, month or two, we would encourage you to just register on the website so that we can then have the opportunity to market to you. It's really a great event. We appreciate you considering it in the future. It's 2 hours, 4 to 6 p.m., once a quarter, so not a big time break. And with that, thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Next, we have Steve with Hotwire.
Hello, everybody, and thank you once again for inviting us to be part of DSCA. My news is sort of a follow-up to last month when we talked about the new fiber trunk that's running from Bradenton down Tamiami to the foot of the Ringland Bridge, and hopefully in the not-too-distant future across the Ringland Bridge over to Lough. But that has created a wonderful opportunity for a lot of small condominium buildings 20, 30, 40 units that could not have access to fiber optics in the past can now have access because our route runs right down Tamiami. So we're starting to get a lot of interest from a number of the smaller buildings along that route, and we're very pleased with progress. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Then we have Eric with Gold, and he's on here, I believe.
Yep. Crew Bank.
Crew Bank. Are you there, Eric?
I'm there. How's everybody doing? I'm with Cruz Bank and Trust. We're a full service bank, been family owned, been around since 1929. So that's really a lot to say about a bank these days. Been around that many years, family owned, run, everything. A little bit of my specialty, I'm a mortgage lender. So what I specialize a lot is in condo loans, and I do warrantable condos and non-warrantable condos at our bank. So if you know anybody that can't get approved, reach out to me. But happy to be on, be a sponsor for you all. We are right downtown Sarasota on the corner of Palm and Main, and love to see you guys come out sometime. Thank you.
That's Hannah Ball
Oh,
left, yeah.
They're left. Yeah.
Is that,
I think so, right?
okay, and are there any comments from member Cheryl or Barbara? You had a question from earlier.
Yeah, I did. Could somebody explain to me the purpose, perhaps Roger, of that VO system that I see these kids on those bikes that you use your charge card and you can ride that bike around all over. I don't know if the purpose of that is to provide an alternate means of transportation who are now leaving their cars in their garage and instead they're getting on a bike. I don't know if that's the theory or the philosophy behind that, but the people I see on the VO, I don't think have cars back in their garages. They're young kids and they're having a ball, no helmets, the whole thing. So what's going to happen with this VO thing? And what purpose does it serve?
Well, you're right in identifying a purpose, and that was to put short distances and people to not use their cars. And you do see people with, I saw a woman with a briefcase the other day going past.
Well, I've seen them, I saw a whole family. It's mostly, I'd say 90% kids, okay. But I did see a family and the little kids were sitting at scary stuff.
I don't think, that's not appropriate. And I watch them go across the bridge, and a lot of people going to St. Armand's with that. And I see mostly adults. I do see some teenagers occasionally. Well, let me back up and say, no, it is a wildly successful program. Its usage has far outstripped even in Tampa in its use. And so I'm not sure how this will be evaluated or what will happen with it, but the company is extremely happy. And
So they're keeping the statistics?
yes,
And they know the ages? of
I'm
the-
not sure they know the ages. I believe that you have to have a driver's license and you have to be at least, I think it's 16, it might be 18, before you can rent it. But that doesn't mean that people younger than that are not
Yeah, we've seen it. Yeah, yeah.
using it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Which
I
means-
haven't heard any accident statistics or anything like that. That's a good question. But I do know that they were surprised by the usage.
Okay, but I don't see any purpose that they're serving other than clogging our streets with some little kids running around. It means I have to hold back, go real slow, because they do what they want. And they can move a lot faster than I can. So I'm trying to figure out why have they been introduced to the roadway when we have enough people here driving who are strange to the area, they're visitors, they don't know what's what. And then we have the people who don't know what's what because they should not be driving. They're far too old. And I even have a friend who is legally blind who still drives because she knows the roads, she just can't read the signs. Okay, so we have a rather strange mix on our roads and I'm concerned about safety. And that's the only reason I'm asking for, do you know when the contract is up with this VO that?
Well, I'll say bluntly, I think it's considered a micro-transit success. And yes, there is abuse of it, but it has been highly used. It's been used by many adults, not taking their cars. It's taking cars off the highway. We know it's taking cars off the bridge.
But how do you know that if they don't know the ages and they, who's doing the statistics?
But let's,
Anyhow,
can we talk
Yeah,
over one?
I'm the only one that knows about it.
Over one, is that?
David, I'd like to make one comment on that, because that's the kind of anecdotal data I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If you went to Arcos, where I lived for 2 years waiting for this house to be built, there's a corral of vehicles out there, bicycles, scooters, I don't know, I didn't use them, but I do know that most of Arcos has adults in it, and you go out there after 5 o'clock, and you can't, there isn't one there. You go back at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're all back there. So all of residential living who want to go somewhere are hopping on those rather than taking their cars out of the parking garage, or maybe not even having a car and living in an apartment. I think there's probably a good cross section, and in other communities are working real well. In Washington D.C. it works real well. They have a different kind of community there. But I think it's a good alternative on the transportation of adults.
Well, and it eliminates the need for additional parking, for example, in Rosemary.
Yeah, well, that's the only way I'm gonna be able to eat in Rosemary pretty soon. I have to take a bite.
Okay, Jim, just one last quick one.
Yeah, this is
For
about-
once, we're gonna end right at 5:30.
This is about the Gulfstream roundabout. I know that Roger and I differ on our position, but I am also very familiar with the roundabout. There's an area that there are 3 lanes, and that's what makes it dramatically more complicated. And a whole group of us has proposed closing off the Gulfstream, so it's one fewer choices. I would also recommend, I didn't get a chance to talk to Liz, but we should also consider, as much as I love art, that we should consider maybe some roundabouts aren't appropriate, because when you negotiate, as many of you do, the roundabout at Gulfstream, you need almost 180 degrees to anticipate the traffic.
Yes.
Is that right? Almost 180 degrees. Any structure that reduces the line of sight is a safety concern. That's all I'm saying. And so we may have to consider, maybe we don't have a sculpture at every roundabout.
Okay. With that said, we are right at 5:30 on the dot.
Good job.
And our next meeting is September 6th. And don't have a guest speaker for that yet, but certainly hope everybody enjoys the rest of summer. And Victor is going to talk to you if you stick around. So thank you. Let's consider ourselves adjourned.
Thank you.